So let's get started. Up first, we have our phenomenal civil society fellow, Aviva Nassimi, and her guest, Roya Hakakian.
Thank you so much, Nikki. Before we begin, I just want to thank you and Dar and the entire ADL team and the Aspen team for really creating a space like this, because there aren't too many other communities where we can really gather people from across the spectrum, geographically, politically, and in so many ways. So thank you for creating the space. And now I am so thrilled and so thankful to have my dear friend and fellow community member, Roya Hakakian. She is author of Assassins of the Turquoise Palace, Journey from the Land of No. And if you haven't seen her in the Atlantic, I highly check out that you read Bonfire of the Headscarves. And I'm excited because, while we're here talking about our fears and hopes for the United States, I'd like to talk about home for Roya and I, which is Iran. And you may be asking, we're talking about America and democracy in the United States. Why are we thinking about the folks over there? But as we all know, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So with that, I'd like Roya, if you could just introduce yourself, tell us about your experience immigrating to the United States and how that has shaped your experience coming from Iran to here.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to join you. I'm a fan of Aspen and of Aviva's. So it's a pleasure to be on this morning. I came to the United States as a refugee. And one of the things that Aviva didn't mention is that my most recent book is called A Beginner's Guide to America for the Immigrant and the Curious. And it was a book that I decided to write, especially when the presidential elections were going on in 2016. And I was hearing statements like, we don't need immigrants from, certain parts of the world. We don't need those who didn't speak English or don't speak English. We don't need the ones who don't have skills or, come from Muslim nations. And it looked for a moment, even though I've been here for decades, that I checked so many of the boxes of the people that our politicians were saying they don't need anymore. So I felt compelled, given who I was and how I came to this country, to write precisely about the fact that we do need people from all over the world. We do need to keep the American fabric, its diversity intact by keeping this amazing diversity that has made us as a society and as a global leader so enriched in general. So that's my background. I'm a refugee and a naturalized US citizen, and delighted to be here in conversation.
Thank you so much, Roya. We've all been, really glued to social media and to the news, trying to understand what's happening in Iran right now. Can you tell us what we're witnessing and what does that mean for democracy in the United States and around the world?
So the notion of divisions came up in the opening credits that rolled this morning. And I think as we think about the concept of divisions in this country, we also need to account for the notion of divisions as we have had them from the 20th century about our global community. I don't think it's safe for us to think of ourselves as a divided global community in the way that we have in the past. I think the best lessons to take away from COVID, from the threat to the environment, are that we are interconnected, and that if democracy cannot flourish in distant parts of the world, it cannot flourish here too. So the fight in Iran at the moment, in my view, is a fight for a secular democracy that Iran has been trying to achieve since 1906. The first effort that Iran put towards that began in 1906 with what was called a constitutional revolution. And then it came to a tragic peak in 1979. And now here we are watching a generation try to separate the concept of religion from the concept of government or the state. And I think if they succeed, not only their lives will be changed for the better, but our global community, every one of us, everywhere else around the world, will be better off.
Yeah, that is so well said. And one thing that I think is so unique about this particular, revolution or uprising is that it's led by women, by young women, by women of all backgrounds in Iran. And I'd love if we could just take a moment to honor them and to hear how we in the United States can support them and what women around the world can learn from the recent experiences of women in Iran.
Exactly. Well, yes. But there's an implicit danger in the notion of this being exclusively known as a women's revolution, because I'm afraid that the depth of what this is will somehow remain hidden. Women did lead this movement and are leading this movement, but now this is a nationwide movement for freedom, for democracy, as precisely it's been captured in the slogan, woman, life, liberty. Iranians recognize that the idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness upon which this democracy stands is a very good one, except that before they can pursue happiness, they need to reach gender equality. So that's why they have kept the two other elements from the American principle, and they have replaced the pursuit of happiness with the notion of woman, which refers to the idea of equality for the genders. So I think as I was kind of trying to chart out my new piece, I was trying to think, why this is a universal issue. And I think part of the idea of embracing this slogan, woman, life, liberty, has reverberations throughout the region. All of Arab Spring, all of what's going on in Afghanistan, and so many other parts of the Middle East is a struggle at the heart for gender equality. So our support for what's happening in Iran will eventually translate for a regional seismic change that will be good, not just for Iran, again, and for the region, but for the rest of us. And what we need to do as Americans is to begin to consider a new paradigm. For the last 10, 15 years, we've been so focused on Iran as a singular issue of the nuclear problem. And this has come at the expense of so much else that has been going on in Iran. There's been a robust feminist movement ongoing inside Iran. There's been a robust secular movement for a secular style democracy. And we have completely foregone attention to these other movements because we've been singularly blindsided by the nuclear issue. So I'm inviting everybody to allow ourselves to first and foremost recognize the fact that Iranians want precisely what we want, even though for the past 40 plus years, we have reduced them to only an angry nation who hate us and a nuclear problem. They are far more than that. We're talking about a civilization with 2,500 years of history and an advanced nation that is struggling for democracy precisely like Ukrainians are. And I think that it begins with kind of beginning to see Iran in a different way.
That is so powerful, Roya. I think that's a perfect place for us to end. And I want to thank you for the work that you're doing and the voice that you're giving. If anyone is looking for kind of consistent wisdom and guidance like we heard today, follow her on Twitter at Roya the Writer. She's been a great source of inspiration to me. Roya, thank you for being here. And we're moving from Iran to New York, now to Reno, Nevada. I'm excited to pass it off to my fellow, Caleb Cage. And thank you to our next speakers.